A woman with special powers, a mutated female antagonist, turn-based battles, cinematic storytelling, the Welsh countryside, a xenophobic holy man.
Obviously a dirty immigrant thief.
A himbo? Wait a minute, this isn't Parasite Eve. No, it's not. This is Koudelka, that other PS1 horror RPG. It's not remembered as much as Parasite Eve, and that's what makes it a game worth investigating. So let's turn back the clock to 1898 and take a trip to the seaside town of Aberystwyth, Wales, to experience Koudelka. Koudelka is a Japanese role-playing game developed by Saknoth and originally released for the PlayStation 1 in Japan in 1999, with a worldwide release following in 2000. Koudelka was created by Hiroki Kikuta, who had worked as a composer at Squaresoft, best known for scoring both Secret of Mana and its Japan-only, at the time, sequel Seiken Densetsu 3, now known internationally as Trials of Mana. After his success as a composer, Kikuta wanted to move on to directing his own game. However, the rigid corporate hierarchy at Square prevented him from moving into a directorial position. A composer directing a video game? Preposterous. But Kikuta knew his future lay in creating his own games, and after a meeting with SNK, who agreed to bankroll a new development house, he finally got his chance. So Kikuta left Square in 1997 to found his own video game company, Saknoth. Saknoth immediately began development on 3 games. Well, technically 4. Dive Alert, their first official release, was an RPG developed for the Neo Geo Pocket Color that came out with 2 versions, most likely an attempt to capitalize on Nintendo's strategy of releasing different versions of Pokémon. Not the first developer to try to ape Nintendo's tactic, and certainly not the last. A tactical RPG called Facilite, don't forget the exclamation point, was also in development for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. And finally, there was Koudelka. Koudelka was the only one of these games Kikuta was involved with. He acted as producer, writer, director, and composer. While the handheld games were attempts to get some cash flowing and appease publisher SNK by getting more games out on their handheld console, Koudelka was Kikuta's baby, and he had some novel ideas that he wanted to try out now that he was finally in charge of his own team. He knew he wanted to break away from a lot of the conventions of RPG design that he felt were played out during his time at Square. Instead of swords and sorcery and fantastical lands, he wanted gothic horror set in the real world, specifically the Welsh countryside of the late 1800s. He also wanted a real-time combat system with interactive environments. He scored on the genre and setting. The team even took a trip to Pembrokeshire in Wales for research, studying the landscape and architecture of the area, gathering references for Koudelka's art direction. Kikuta couldn't win out on the game design side of things, though. The other developers on the team, many of whom had followed him from Square, were uneasy leaving behind the turn-based combat systems they had become comfortable programming. So the game ended up retaining turn-based combat while allowing for grid-based movement of characters and enemies during battle. And there's one encounter that has some environmental obstacles, so, they tried. On the story side of things, Kikuta had complete control and spent months researching British history as well as reading several novels, including one of my favorite books, The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, a tale of 2 monks who visit an Italian monastery in the 1300s to investigate a murder. If you like creepy, complex narratives, you should read The Name of the Rose. Kikuta also envisioned Koudelka as the first in a 4-part saga that would follow the titular Koudelka Yasant and her descendants through the 20th century. The second game was to take place in 1900, 2 years after the events of the first, where Koudelka would attend the Paris Exposition. The third game would take place in Chicago, 1973, and follow Koudelka's grandson, Rodmel. The fourth game was to take place in Kyoto in 1984, again starring Rodmel. Unfortunately, we never got any of these games. Kikuta had a falling out with the rest of the team following the completion of Koudelka and left the company shortly after the game's release. After that, Koudelka's world and setting were picked up by another developer at Saknoth, Matsuzo Machida, who would use it as the springboard for his own series, Shadow Hearts, the spiritual successor to Koudelka. But that's a story for another time. Upon release, Koudelka was met with mixed reviews. Many critics praised the atmosphere and storytelling, but found the combat and exploration slow-paced and uninteresting. Sales weren't so hot either. Reportedly, the game did okay in Japan, but Infogrames, the worldwide publisher, didn't even release sales figures for Koudelka on its year-end financial reports. I'm always intrigued by these games that critics scoffed at on their initial release. I didn't play Koudelka right when it came out, but I knew of its existence thanks to articles and ads in Electronic Gaming Monthly, my gaming magazine of choice back in the 90s and 2000s. So, the game was quietly forgotten by most players. Of course, it gained its own cult following, and interest was bolstered a bit by the release and relative success of the Shadow Hearts series, but in the rare moments when conversations on horror RPGs pop up, Koudelka always seems to be a second thought. As far as the PlayStation library goes, it's never remembered before Square's phenomenal Parasite Eve, and there are some good reasons for that. But first, let's set up what Koudelka is all about. The game opens with a cutscene showing that all the budget that went into the developer's trip to Wales really paid off. We follow a cloaked figure on horseback through the gorgeous twilit Welsh countryside. The gloomy atmosphere, along with the beautiful choral vocals, make this one of the most stunning openings to a game on the PS1, maybe one of the most stunning openings in all of video games. Eventually, this cloaked figure arrives on a hilltop overlooking Namatin Monastery, the main setting of the game. Uh-oh. Koudelka takes place over a single night, Halloween 1898, in Aberystwyth, Wales, which seems to be a typo of Aberystwyth, the actual Welsh town on the northern coast of the country. And going back to the date, if you want to get technical about it, in 1898, the Welsh probably weren't celebrating Halloween as we know it, but instead Nos Galan Gaeth, which I'm sure I totally butchered, and which roughly translates to the night before the first day of winter. So, a festival celebrating the winter solstice. But anyway, still a spooky date by all accounts. And the single night and confined setting helped to ground Koudelka's world and narrative, creating a more intimate and personal tale compared to the save-the-world style of RPG storytelling that mostly still dominates the genre even today. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, I love saving the world, just pointing out the difference in Koudelka's scope. After arriving at the monastery and finding the main entrance barred, the cloaked figure searches for another entry point and settles for grappling to the roof. Before the climb, they throw back their hood, revealing the face of Koudelka Yasant, our main protagonist. After scaling the walls and narrowly avoiding being taken out by a loose roof spike that causes her to lose the pendant around her neck, she enters through one of the windows on the upper floors and finds a wounded man slumped against a doorway. Upon approach, the man raises his pistol, but not at Koudelka, instead at the monster creeping up behind her. This gives us an introduction to Koudelka's combat, but we'll come back to this a little bit later. After she takes out the monster, the man thanks Koudelka.
Hey, Angel. I'm not gonna ask you to take me to heaven.
Smooth. Because he did save her, Koudelka decides to use her powers to heal the wounded man, who whines like a bitch during the process.
Shut up. Keep it down. Okay, let's go. Stand up or I'll leave you here.
What happened? It doesn't hurt anymore. I'm cured.
Yeah, and so I cured you, so what?
Pretty much immediately, we're introduced to the type of character Koudelka is, this cool, distant personality. We'll learn more about her as we go along, but she maintains this tough, loner persona throughout, which makes her a badass. The man she's healed is Edward J. Plunkett.
I know I look pretty shady.
Understatement. He's impressed by Koudelka's powers, comparing her to an angel, but Koudelka assures him she's just a spiritual medium. Edward entered the monastery because he heard a rumor about a rich man who converted the place into a mansion. Thinking it would lead to an easy payday, he came out here to rob the place, but ended up in way over his head when he was attacked by a monster. Koudelka doesn't really give a shit about his story though, and is lost in thought about how she wasted a good horse on the trip out here.
I came all this way to put a poor man's fear of God into this rich bastard. So far, I haven't found anything. Then this monster attacked me. I almost got killed. If you'd come any later, no doubt I'd be singing hymns in his stomach right now.
Shouldn't have bought such a good horse. She's too fast.
Too bad you won't be hearing me sing those hymns. When I was a boy, I was a pretty good soprano.
If you don't stop talking, I'll leave you here. My name is Koudelka, and I'm only going to say this once, so don't forget. If you want to get out of here alive, I suggest you stick very close. Got it?
Charmed, I'm sure.
The voice acting is not bad in this one. There are definitely some stilted line deliveries. Oh boy, are there. But it's fun. I'm a fan of the not-so-great voice acting from the 90s, and I've heard much, much worse than this. Just watch some of my other videos if you don't believe me.
Oh, there's no problem with my CFOX system. No accident should have occurred. Oh!
Like a lot of Japanese survival horror games with Western settings, there are only English voices here, so those hoping for a better sounding Japanese language track are out of luck. Koudelka and Edward team up to explore the monastery. Most of it is decrepit and abandoned, filled with other monsters and ghosts. But when they make their way to the first floor, they stumble upon the caretakers, Ogden and Bessie Hartman, who invite them to sit down for a meal. Never mind that they both broke into the monastery, broke the roof spike, busted the window, shot up the place, but you know, yeah, why don't you guys just sit down for a meal? Koudelka isn't keen on trying any of the potato soup that's on offer. Edward doesn't mind digging in though. Ogden reveals that the Namatin Monastery was originally built to appease monsters and evil spirits by a saint from Ireland named Daniel Scodius.
You might not believe this, but we saw a monster on our way here.
Is that so? You saw it too?
You mean that monster's been around for a while?
Well, we've been taking care of the monastery for a number of years, but from about 6 months ago, monsters have been appearing.
We see them more and more every month.
I used to be a sailor. I'm not afraid of any monster.
Big sailor boy over here, ain't afraid of no monsters. Koudelka and Edward regroup in the kitchen where Edward admonishes her for not eating the food that was offered by the kind caretakers.
Yeah, if it weren't poisoned, then I would have had some.
Pardon?
I said, if the soup weren't poisoned, then I would have had some. Got it?
Poisoned? No way.
Just a little bit. I smelled some poisonous plant.
What's that?
Oh, I can tell you how you're going to feel. In about half an hour, you won't be able to move your body. If you don't find an antidote, you'll definitely die.
I love how Koudelka just muses to herself while Edward suffers in pain. She does eventually heal up Edward, and the two continue their exploration of the monastery. They find an herb garden with an unconscious man inside, and are attacked by a giant plant monster. After taking out the monster, the man comes to, and Koudelka and Edward are introduced to James O'Flaherty, a bishop from the Vatican who's searching for something inside the monastery. He was welcomed by Ogden and Bessie, and he, rightfully, accuses Koudelka and Edward of being thieves. When the two tell him that the caretakers attempted to poison them, James refuses to believe it.
So nothing happened to you then?
Of course not. Not until I encountered that monster.
Yeah? And we're the ones who took care of that monster. Far be it from me to expect any words of gratitude from you.
I see. And I can tell from your appearances that the power of your faith alone was not enough to smooth things out with that monster.
It wasn't the kind of problem that faith alone could solve.
James seems to be lost in his own thoughts, so Koudelka and Edward are about to leave him behind, but James decides in the end to tag along with them. So now that we've got the 3 members of our party that we'll have throughout the entire game, let's discuss Koudelka's gameplay. Combat features random encounters with turn-based battles. Characters and enemies both move on a grid, with formation and positioning playing an important role in strategy. Characters can be preemptively placed in certain spots on the battle screen by using the formation command in the menu, with Koudelka, Edward, and James each being represented by a different chess piece. As with most RPGs, you'll want your more robust characters out front and your weaker spellcasters or ranged fighters behind. The big quirk of this system comes with movement and targeting. You can't move past the frontmost enemy on the battlefield, and likewise, the enemies can't move past your frontmost character. So if you stick your tank out front, a physical attacking enemy will never be able to reach your back line. Ranged and magic attacks can of course still reach though. This is really good. However, if your tank happens to fall in battle and an enemy moves onto the line that the unconscious character is lying on, you won't be able to target that character with reviving items or magic until you kill the enemy on that row. Lots of boss battles that at first seem to be easy wins can quickly turn against you if this happens, which makes keeping your front row character alive imperative during tougher fights, and I feel like this is where most of the difficulty of the game comes in. The 3 characters in your party roughly fall into tank, mage, and cleric classes just based on their personalities, but you can actually build out your characters any way you see fit. When you gain enough experience to level up, you'll be given ability points that can be freely distributed among 8 stats. So in theory, if you wanted Koudelka to be your tanky melee bruiser, you could build her out that way. Edward could even be your mage, since all characters can use magic and have access to the same list of spells. However, you'll find that Edward's magical prowess never matches that of Koudelka's or James's, and though Koudelka can be quite powerful with physical attacks, she'll never quite match Edward's damage output. But again, the game gives you the freedom to experiment. As for the stats themselves, strength increases melee damage, vitality increases max HP and physical damage resistance, dexterity increases the accuracy of physical attacks, agility increases your speed and turn rate in battle, intelligence increases magical damage, piety increases MP and magical resistance, mind increases magical accuracy, and luck covers a nebulous list of benefits, including enemy encounter rate, accuracy, defense, your chances of escape, and etc., according to the manual. Helpful. One thing you'll have to be aware of as you build up your characters is the balance between certain stats. For example, strength and dexterity are linked. You'll need to increase them relatively evenly to make sure that your physical attacks actually land. The same goes for intelligence and mind. You'll need to keep these points within a certain range of each other for your magic to actually hit enemies. Through some experimenting, I found that if you let your dexterity or mind fall 10 to 15 points below your strength or intelligence stat, you'll face a higher likelihood of your attacks missing. The game does tell you this if you look at the in-game stat description from the menu. You're going to want to pump up everyone's agility, as well as boost some HP. Everyone is also going to need some piety to withstand magical attacks. Beyond the first couple of areas, most of the game's enemies like to use magic, and if you do make Edward your tanky fighter, even if he's bulked up with HP, he'll take huge damage from magic for most of the game with low piety. The difference boosting that stat makes is big too, going from several hundred damage into the single digits or even 0. And you might be thinking, wow, if I can effectively reduce magical damage to 0, this game must be a cakewalk then, right? Well, if you know what you're doing, of course, it can be. But the problem with enemy magic specifically is that even if it doesn't cause a lot of damage, it often inflicts status effects such as poison, paralysis, and silence. You can only use items to cure status effects too. There are no spells that will do it, and your inventory and items are limited, taking some cues from the survival horror genre. We'll look at that in a minute. I mentioned that every character has access to the same magic list, and the spells here are pretty standard. There's a healing spell, as well as fire, water, wind, and earth spells, followed by attribute buffing spells tied to each of the 8 stats I talked about earlier. Every time you cast a spell, that character's experience with it increases, and a spell's power can be increased to a maximum level of 3. Increasing a spell's level strengthens its effects and how many enemies can be targeted with it. The same goes for the healing spell. Increase it and you can heal for more or heal multiple characters. Certain spells, such as Revive and Reflect, are locked behind boss battles, so you'll need to defeat that boss and progress the story to gain access to those spells. Along with ability points, weapons, armor, and accessories augment your character's stats as well. You get a ton of weapons throughout the game, and there are different weapon types, ranging from swords, axes, polearms, as well as rifles and pistols. You can even choose to go barehanded. Like magic, every time you use a certain weapon type, you'll gain experience and eventually level it up to a maximum of 3. This increases damage output with that weapon type and increases the number of attacks a character can perform with that weapon in a given turn. Pretty sure the luck stat affects how often combo attacks proc. The problem with weapons, though, is that they break. That's right, there's a durability mechanic here, and weapons will break with use. After a short while, I found a way around this issue by keeping Edward barehanded for most of the game and having Koudelka and James just use magic. My magic users still had weapons equipped to increase their stats, but they hardly ever used them, so no weapon breakage. But if you don't think that kind of strategy sounds particularly fun or interesting, then you're going to have to deal with weapons breaking. And there's no repairing them either. Once they're broken, that's it. You'll have to find a new one. Despite me finding a way around it, I still think it's a badly implemented system. I'm of the opinion that durability can work in certain games if designed and balanced well, but in Koudelka it's really not either of those things. With no way to repair weapons and the limited use, it's just really dumb, and it hurts a game that otherwise gives the player a lot of freedom in how they want to play and build their characters. Your other equipment, the armor and accessories, are also extremely few and far between unless you're constantly boosting your luck stat to increase enemy drops. A thing that the manual doesn't mention, but seems to be true, as I got way more item drops toward the end of the game after boosting my luck stat throughout, as opposed to the mostly 0 I got for the first half when I wasn't increasing that stat. Must be hidden under that etc. umbrella in the stat description. Armor, specifically, is never actually found anywhere through exploration, and can only be gained through drops from random battles. I only ever found 2 armor pieces on my first playthrough, so Edward went through the whole game armorless. It didn't really matter that much, but it would have been nice to get some armor on him and have some extra protection. Thanks, RNGesus. There are also special equipment that can only be found by saving your game at specific times on the game clock while playing, such as 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 22 seconds, 3 hours, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds, and so on, which I found to be more annoying than it was worth. A couple of these items can break the game, but I had no trouble finishing it without any of them. For the completionists out there though, this one's for you. Speaking of saving, there are fountains and altars throughout that act as save points, but they'll need to be purified before you can use them, and this involves defeating a boss, so no saves before bosses. This is only for main saves though. Koudelka also features temporary saves. Certain screens will have the name of the room with an S next to it pop up. If you press the menu button while the room name is displayed, you can make a temporary save. There's only one slot for these, as opposed to multiple main saves, so you'll have to overwrite your previous temporary save. Still, there are way more temporary saves scattered throughout the game than there are main ones, so I made sure to use them almost every time they appeared. Oh yeah, you also have the limited inventory space to contend with, and key items don't have a separate screen, so have fun. Luckily, items can be discarded, but there's a certain key item that you need to actually complete the game that can be discarded. It doesn't soft lock you, and there is a way to get another one towards the end of the game, but if it's your first time playing, you won't know that and can screw yourself into a very bad ending. We'll save that for the spoilers. These things are all minor annoyances that stack up over the course of a playthrough, but I think the thing that will really drive away most players is how slowly the game is paced. Not overall. On the macro level of areas that you progress through and storytelling, the game is very well paced, but the moment-to-moment exploration and combat is going to require a lot of patience. Load times are long, especially between room, battle, and cutscene transitions. Then, the actual battles themselves love to show off every movement and attack animation of every character and enemy on the field. Lots of 3D role-playing games suffered specifically from this slow battle pacing in the late 90s and early 2000s. Developers were so enamored with 3D that they wanted to slather battles in layers and layers of animation and effects. Sure, it looked impressive when it was done well, but it brought the pacing of games to their knees. In Koudelka, you see every step a character takes while moving and attacking an enemy. Even for magic, there's a warm-up period after selecting a spell, and then, like a turn or two later, the character will actually cast the spell. Normal encounters can sometimes take upwards of 3 to 5 minutes to complete, and one boss fight in particular toward the end of the game took me over 35 minutes, and we'll talk about that one. Don't you worry. The thing is, Koudelka's not a long game. You could complete a first playthrough in less than 15 hours, but I'd say more than half of that time is spent in combat. Actually, I can tell you exactly how long, because I broke up my footage and color-coded it for combat, exploration, and cutscenes. My entire playthrough was 12 hours and 51 minutes, and I recorded everything. Cutscenes and story sequences took up an hour and 50 minutes. Combat took 6 hours and 26 minutes, so okay, almost exactly half the playtime. This includes a few deaths, which are in red and mostly happen during boss fights. And look at this one. This is the one I was talking about. It took over an hour with deaths, and when I actually beat it, look at that. 35 minutes. And it's not even the actual length of these battles that are a problem. I've played strategy RPGs, Shining Force, Fire Emblem, Tactics Ogre. I'm used to hour-plus battles sometimes. Not an issue. It's just the amount of waiting. If I broke down these Koudelka fights further, I'd wager half of the battle time is spent watching animations. That's the real test of patience. Koudelka is a game that would greatly benefit from a modern remaster and a speed-up function, because I like the character and enemy models. Enemy designs specifically are fantastic, and there's a huge variety of freaks, monstrosities, and furniture to fight. I also like the formation strategies and seeing the effects of stat increases and character builds, but it just takes so damn long to get through these encounters. On the exploration side of things, Koudelka is laid out like a survival horror game. You explore a creepy estate, find items lying around, even bullets for firearms, and you progress from room to room collecting items and solving puzzles. The puzzles themselves are fairly simple, but you'll need to thoroughly explore to make sure you find the hints. If you encounter a puzzle without first seeing the hint, you won't be able to solve it, even if you can figure out the correct solution. On the other hand, if you've seen the hint, a lot of the time the puzzles will just solve themselves. So there's that. It's weird. Luckily, the areas you explore look gorgeous. The smaller scale of the world and story allowed the artists to really go all out on these pre-rendered backgrounds, cramming them full of detail. Every screen in this game is recognizable and unique, and because of this, I never really got lost. There's a map, but I never used it. The level layout is fantastic as well, with shortcuts leading back to earlier areas and lots of looping design, which is my favorite. During one point near the end of the game, when I realized I needed to return to a place I hadn't been to since the beginning, I at first felt my heart sink, but when I realized how easy it was to get back there thanks to the shortcuts I had opened up, it felt really satisfying. This is one element of the game where Koudelka never felt like a slog. As for the 3D elements of the visuals, I was impressed. This is a later era PS1 title, and again, a smaller scale game, so character models both in-game and in the CG cutscenes looked great. Some of the side characters can look a bit uncanny in CG, and I think that adds to the creepiness of the game. The CG models of the caretakers, Ogden and Bessie specifically, reminded me of the characters from The Dark Eye. There's just an off-kilter creepiness to these designs. I've already talked about the voice acting, and it's fine. There are some standouts though, like the monk Roger Bacon, a side character who the party meets about halfway through the game. His voice actor, Brian Kojak, only has one voice acting credit, and it's this game, but man, he knocks it out of the park.
My name is Roger Bacon, and I'm just like any normal old man.
Hey, I've been around for 20 years, and I have yet to run across an old man as abnormal as yourself.
I see. Well, I've been around for 600 years, and I've seen plenty of abnormal people just like myself.
Despite its dreary setting, the game features quite a bit of quirky humor, helped along by this guy, and the constant bickering between the three main characters.
What do you mean we can't get out? How hard can it be?
Why don't you ask these guys?
Damn it! Did you see that? Someone's in here.
Will you shut up and get us out of here? How hard can it be for thieves like you to get us out of a place like this?
Try saying that in the East End, holy man. Your severed head would hit the ground before you even finished the thought.
Then there's the music, composed by Kikuta himself, and what can you expect from the guy who did Secret of Mana and Trials of Mana? It's fantastic, so haunting and moody. The battle theme was also a treat every single time I heard it. And there are some quieter pieces that really up the emotional stakes of some scenes. The sound design is also incredible. There are lots of creepy sound effects, creaks and screams and shouts, the wind howling as you're exploring. It sets you on edge. It's not the same as a survival horror game where you never know when an enemy could be waiting around the next corner, but it still heightens the eerie atmosphere. As Koudelka, Edward, and James continue exploring the Namentin Monastery, they take a breather to assess their situation, and James goes off monologuing for a minute. Then Edward, surprisingly, quotes some Lord Byron poetry, which James doesn't appreciate due to the poet's unrefined nature.
And who gave you the right to judge the refinement of poetry?
Poetry should delve into the depths of the souls of the faithful. And others. It should inspire the soul as to Alexander Pope or George Herbert.
If they have the power to do away with these evil spirits, I'd choose anyone. Even that dear old carpenter's son. you love
Blasphemous!
so much.
Pagan! How dare you utter such words of sin?
To seek help from someone you've never met before is ridiculous, especially when people are dying from hunger every single day in London.
They're all filthy and immoral little beggars that deserve to die.
Whoa, James. These kinds of philosophical and societal arguments crop up between these three often, and it's a strong point of contention in the party dynamics. In fact, all of the characters have quite a bit of tension between them right up until the end, and I love this. It's great to have RPGs where you're questing with your buddies, but games that force characters from different walks of life and with different belief systems into having to work together are really interesting to me. And despite some shaky voice acting, the script overall is really solid. The party's bickering is brought to an end by a bullet through one of the nearby windows.
That doesn't sound like a demonic spirit to me.
The noise is coming from that building over there.
The poison didn't kill us, so now they're taking the fast and easy way now.
Don't be ridiculous!
Why don't you ask the bullets who's being ridiculous?
You idiots!
As they attempt to make their way to the building where the shots are coming from, they stumble upon an old prison where notes from a guard detail the tortures of prisoners that took place here over 100 years ago. Koudelka, being a medium, is affected by the suffering of the spirits. She suggests letting one of the spirits possess her body to hear what it has to say. She also reveals that the reason she came to the monastery in the first place is because she heard a cry for help from one particular female spirit. So, a spirit possesses her, and we get the details of the atrocities that took place here.
Kill them! They cut off my fingers. They crushed my legs. They smashed my head and cut out my guts. They took everything from me. They locked me up and chopped my body.
Oh, my eyes! Oh, my ears! Oh, they're burned! Help! Help!
This leads to a confrontation with the spirit of a little girl named Charlotte Delata, who attempts to lead Edward off the edge of a broken balcony.
Edward!
You should have just died before. I wanted you to lay down and die.
What a brat. The trio stumble across more and more dead bodies, some of them even freshly deceased. After fighting some doppelgangers of themselves, just roll with it, gotta have some boss fights to break things up, Edward speculates that the caretakers were the killers of the more recent victims they've found. But James can't believe that the kind old couple who welcomed him into the monastery could ever do something like that. He even says those people probably deserve to die.
They're all liars and thieves anyway. This is still a monastery. This is still God's house, prison or no. Why all those liars and heathens are killed is none of my concern.
How could you possibly say a thing like that? That doesn't sound very priestly.
I am not a priest. I am a bishop.
I don't give a rat's ass what you are. Look, I'm not saying that all of those people were saints, okay? But that doesn't mean that they should be put to death.
You saw that old couple. They're so well-mannered, kind. You think they're killers?
Good manners?
Yes.
Think about it. Why would they leave the place such a mess?
I don't know.
You think they'd at least bury the body?
Possibly.
Anyway, I have this strange feeling we're not alone with all these bodies and ghosts. You'd better keep your mouths shut. If you want to live.
Further into the underground area, these three fat asses crash through the floor, and Edward catches a glimpse of a dark figure where they just fell from. Finding themselves inside one of the prison cells they've been hearing so much about, they get another visit from Charlotte, who reveals that she also died in this prison at 9 years old.
My poor little angel.
Poor little angel, me? Save your pity for yourself. You'll be dead within 3 days.
Not true. I don't know what your circumstances are, but I know that your mother loved you very, very much.
My mother? I don't know her face, her name, where she came from. Nothing. You're telling me that means nothing? From the day I was born, the day I die, no one ever loved me. And I never wanted to be loved. Just die!
Charlotte sends a ghost minion to deal with Koudelka, Edward, and James, and the ensuing brawl destroys one of the prison walls, allowing them to escape their cell. This is about as good a time as any to throw out a spoiler warning. If you want to experience Koudelka on your own, skip to this time to get my final thoughts, or use the chapter select. There's a lot more to uncover about the nature of the Naimanton Monastery and the origins of these monsters and spirits, as well as our three protagonists' backstories. Anyway, if you'd rather have me spoil the entire story for you, then let's continue. After escaping from the prison, the mysterious figure who's been slinking around tries to crush the party with a chandelier. And hey, it's the arm of Daniel Scotius. We better hold on to that. You never know when the rotting arm of a saint will come in handy. The party encounters the thief Alias, who's the one who's been shooting at them this whole time. This is also the fight I mentioned earlier where they tried out some environmental obstacles. You have to destroy these boxes before you can target Alias with any of your attacks. It's pretty lazily implemented, and they never try anything like this again. Afterwards, our trio of heroes confront Alias, and James just goes off.
Where you from, Hamburg? Not that it really matters. You're obviously a dirty immigrant thief.
Whoa, James. Come on, man.
Probably infected with cholera or something, most of you are.
God damn, dude. They try to figure out if he's the one who committed all of these murders, but Alias insists that it was the old caretaker couple.
Usually they use an axe when they catch thieves. The thieves come down here unarmed. They're stupid. They get caught from behind. I'd watch my back if I were you.
Unbelievable.
No, I'm telling you. The lucky ones die on the first strike. I've heard the others screaming through the night, clutching their bellies. I find them in the morning dead. No, I'm telling you, their fingers to their hearts, right through to their organs with a pain. Look, take it or leave it, but I'm telling you the truth. Those two, they're Satan incarnate. I may look shady, but killing's not my style. Look, the more wholesome they look on the outside, the colder and uglier the heart is. Just look at him!
Yeah, good assessment for a thief.
I love how Koudelka and Edward laugh at that jab at James. It's great. Things take a cold turn, though, as the party tries to decide what they should do with Alias now that he's wounded.
Still, he did try to kill us. For that.
What did you do that for?
Oh, now suddenly James cares.
If our lives cease being threatened, then it's a victory for God and all His glory, right? But if we go on letting them attack us, then the filthy, godless pagans win. Which would you like to bet on?
Cold-blooded. Later on, they find a bunch of paintings of a burning ship that Koudelka recognizes as the Princess Alice, a boat that sank in the Thames. In an old printing press room, Koudelka has a vision of a woman named Elaine and a man proposing to her. Koudelka realizes that this is the spirit of the woman who summoned her to Naimanton Monastery. Just a couple rooms away, the party finds an archive of old texts, and James searches feverishly for one specific document, but he can't find it. Edward demands that James explain what he's looking for and why he's here.
Just cut the charade and tell us what's going on.
I do not like this. We all have our reasons.
Why don't you sing us a song there, Piano Man? James stays tight-lipped, for now. Then the three heroes stumble across something really weird.
Is that just a mummy? Cross your fingers.
That was disappointing.
Holy
savior. The secret of the Fomors from the bottom of the sea. Immigrate!
Talk about tonal whiplash. The mummy's mention of the émigré document piques James's interest, and he finally reveals that he was sent by the Vatican to recover this document, which was stolen from the Vatican library.
Not many people could steal a thing like that from the Vatican. You really have to know the place, or have enough money. According to our secret investigation, however, the wealthy gentleman who purchased this monastery bribed someone within the Vatican to steal the émigré document for him.
Wealthy gentleman?
Yes. Patrick Hayworth.
This is our first mention of Patrick Hayworth, who turns out to be a friend of James's. Patrick has an interest in mysticism, and James reveals that the émigré document contains secrets of resurrection, though James insists it's all superstition and says his purpose is to convince Patrick to return the émigré document to the Vatican.
According to the caretakers, he lives in the building next to the temple.
They said that?
Yes, they're terrified. With all the crazy things going on around here now, they haven't even seen Patrick, yet they feel indebted to him. They've asked me here to see if I can save him.
So that's your story?
I don't know. One more mystery that needs unraveling.
After making their way to a chapel, the party is attacked and separated by a gargoyle. This is actually a powerful, optional boss that can be fought in the second half of the game. There's no reward for killing this boss other than bragging rights, I guess. And aside from the timed item collection, it's the only other thing that could be considered a side quest in the game. The gargoyle grows stronger as your party does, so it takes some planning to defeat this thing. At this moment, Koudelka is alone and there's no way to win, so the only choice is to run. With Koudelka separated, we spend some time with only her, but her magic should be strong enough to allow her to hold her own against most enemies you'll encounter throughout this portion of the game. You can also find Koudelka's pendant that she lost in the opening cutscene in this courtyard. Make sure you grab it. Trust me. I'll show you what happens when you don't toward the end of the video. Koudelka finds herself in an execution chamber and is knocked unconscious. When she awakens, she's strapped to a table while Ogden, the old man caretaker of the monastery, sharpens an axe nearby. Turns out, Ogden was the captain of the Princess Alice, the ship that went down in the Thames. He also mentions the name Elaine, the spirit who beckoned Koudelka to this place.
All of a sudden, there was a cold ship out of nowhere. It was dark. What could we do? It sank so fast. I was faultless. Elaine. Poor Elaine. If only I'd stayed with her. Hey, you! Hey, how's that? Just a lamp? I'll make you just a lamp!
You're crazy!
Shut up!
Honey, let's stop this now. It's time to stop. It's okay. It's over. I'm sorry.
Bessie explains that Ogden was overcome with guilt over the accident that sank the ship, but Elaine, who came to the monastery with her husband Patrick, helped Ogden cope. However, thieves broke into the manor where Patrick and Elaine lived while Patrick was away, and she was murdered.
We should stop this conversation now. My husband is waiting. He can be so impatient, you know?
Jesus Christ. After escaping her bindings, Koudelka finds a door that won't budge, with Edward and James on the other side. They agree to meet back in the printing room and inform Koudelka that there should be an underground passage she can take that will lead back there.
Koudelka,
Yeah?
don't get killed.
Same to you.
Koudelka, ever the badass. After navigating her way back above ground, she winds up in a graveyard where she finds Charlotte's grave, which I'll talk about in a minute. But she also finds the grave of Saint Daniel Scotius. As Koudelka stops to pray at the saint's grave, the mummy who was laid up in the coffin appears.
And you are?
Where are my manners? Hello! My name is Roger Bacon. I am a monk from the Franciscan order.
A monk? And I thought you were a mummy.
Yes, you are quite right in your assessment of me. Sun-dried kippers may be more pleasant to look at than dull. My shriveled-up appearance. There was a time when I was hailed as the foremost warlock. But my profession seems to go in and out of fashion with the passage of time. Can't do much about that, can I?
You are a strange man. That's if you can be called a man.
I have given up being a man many hundreds of years ago. I am no longer a person, though I hesitate to answer questions regarding my existence because I have yet to figure out exactly what I am.
So Roger Bacon has been in that coffin for almost 100 years apparently, and his voice, man, incredible. Roger has opened up a shortcut for Koudelka, allowing her easy access back into the monastery. In the printing press room, she meets up with Edward and James again. She explains her experience with the caretakers and mentions the names Elaine and Patrick to James, demanding an explanation, since James mentioned earlier that he was searching for Patrick. She says that the caretakers murdered any robber that entered the grounds as a form of revenge for the thief who killed Elaine. James explains how he and Patrick met in university.
We were both studying chemistry and embarking upon similar paths. About that same time, we began competing for the love of a beautiful woman, Elaine, and we had a falling out. I loved Elaine with all my heart. Omnia vincit amor. But love does not conquer all. I soon discovered that I lacked the social status and inheritance money necessary to properly care for someone so well-bred and sheltered as Elaine. I gave up my suit and made way for Patrick. To ease my pain, I joined the church and left the secular world behind. And being the perfectionist I am, the Vatican made me a bishop in charge of some very important matters. But it's been so hard to distance myself from one's emotional attachments. Although I had not seen them for 20 years, I wished them all the best in their life together. And if it hadn't been for this, I wouldn't have thought twice about seeing Patrick again. That's right, Patrick. How can this be? He promised me he was going to take care of Elaine and make her happy. What could have happened?
Koudelka is under the impression that the caretaker's murders of intruders is more than just simple revenge, and that there's a deeper secret they've yet to uncover. Continuing onward, there's a bit of a choice the player can make for an upcoming encounter. We need to deal with the little girl ghost, Charlotte. So, we could fight her, or we could return to a room with a lockbox we couldn't open earlier. There's a hint for how to open it in a different area, and if you've seen that hint, you can open the box and find a series of letters from Sophia Delata, Charlotte's mother, to her daughter. Sophia was the daughter of a duke in Sweden. She had an affair with a man named Philip Christopher, the son of an artillery inspector general. Though the two were in love during their childhood, Sophia was arranged to marry Count Hanover. Sometime after the wedding, Philip came back into her life, and the two carried on their affair until Charlotte came along. She had to send Charlotte away to keep her safe, and she felt the Namatin Monastery in Wales would be the best place. Huge mistake there. The saddest part of all of this is Charlotte mentions that she died when she was 9. Yet the last letter from her mother was written to Charlotte on what would have been her 12th birthday. Oof. If you find and read these letters and pray at Charlotte's grave, then when you encounter Charlotte, instead of fighting her, you'll show her the letters. She finds it hard to accept that her mother loved her, even years after she died, when all she knew was pain and abandonment throughout her short life. But this realization sets her spirit to rest. To level out all the heavy shit we've been dealing with, Koudelka, Edward, and James discover Roger Bacon's secret library in the manor attached to the monastery where Patrick and Elaine lived. James knows of Roger Bacon, but doesn't believe that this old mummy is the same monk from the 13th century. When Roger mentions the emigre document, though, everyone drops the argument of whether or not he's the real Roger Bacon. Roger explains that he was the one who hand-copied the document for the Vatican. It took him years, and he details how the document explains that ancient rituals that could bring the dead back to life. Roger himself is a result of him experimenting with these rituals.
Though I cannot perform the same on others, yes, I have been able to escape the hands of death. But I have not been able to escape the roots of existence, which are the seeds of change. My body is not immune to change, as you can see by my hideous appearance.
Exploring the manor, the party finds a portrait of Elaine. Koudelka channels her spirit through the painting, and Elaine explains how Patrick used the emigre document to attempt to resurrect her.
With Ogden's assistance and the powers from ancient druids, he held a resurrection ceremony in this monastery.
But something went wrong, didn't it?
He only resurrected my physical body. As you can see, my soul is still doomed to roaming the universe, forever separated from my body. And the terrifying thing is that my body was resurrected as a heartless monster.
So, unlike Roger Bacon, who at least succeeded in keeping his soul and body in one piece, Patrick wasn't skilled enough to do the same for Elaine. Later, we'll find Patrick's research notes, where he details how he was having Ogden and Bessie kill intruders so he could then use the corpses in his resurrection ritual. Everyone was kind of acting out of grief here, though they were killing thieves, like the ones who murdered Elaine. So, a little bit of revenge too, I suppose. He also writes about getting a specially ordered carriage from London that he can use to transport homeless people that he's drugged and kidnapped back to his lab. Elaine begs James to burn her body and put an end to things once and for all before fading away.
Wait! Elaine! God! Curse! What a cruel world! I gave everything for your happiness, and now what have I left with? I have no meaning in my life. Damn it! What have I been doing with my life? Elaine! Elaine!
You can't say that James' voice actor isn't going for it. God damn. After finding Patrick's research notes and showing them to Roger Bacon, Roger explains that the ancients resurrected the dead to use their bodies as slaves for construction and agriculture. They had no need for their souls. This doesn't explain how Roger was able to retain his soul, but nobody asks about that. Instead, James is more concerned with how to return the resurrected body to Earth. Roger says they'll need the arm of Daniel Scotius to throw into a cauldron and destroy the Tree of Life that has sprung up around the bell tower on the monastery grounds. Luckily, we've been carrying around that crusty old thing since the thief tried to drop the chandelier on us. On the way to the entrance of the tower, the party runs into a boss called the Apostle, and oh my god, this is the most annoying fight ever. It's not a very powerful boss. It hangs literally at the back of the battlefield and throws magic. Getting close to it is dangerous because it has some powerful physical attacks, so unless you've really beefed up your party, it's best to hang back. Now, this is essentially a gimmick fight. You need to watch how the Apostle is moving to know when to attack. If it's twitching around, it will take no damage from physical attacks and will absorb magic damage. If its wings are flapping slightly, all of your attacks will miss. You need to hit it when it's still. The problem is, his movements are very small, and it's hard to tell at first what phase he's in. Also, his phases change abruptly. Since he absorbs magic, you really can't afford to use spells unless your agility stat is through the roof, because it usually takes some time to cast spells and you could end up healing the boss. So I just had to hang back and use the shotgun with Edward. I tried equipping other ranged weapons on Koudelka and James, but they never managed to do any damage, even in the phases where the boss could take damage. It would have been fine if the boss hadn't had so much HP. I figured out the gimmick and the phases after a few turns, but then it just took so long to whittle down its health. It was awful. Worst boss in the entire game. There are definitely strategies you can use to take it out more quickly, but again, unless you've played this game a bunch or use a guide, then you're just going to have to suffer through an extremely long boss fight. The entrance to the bell tower is blocked, but James says if he could just make some nitroglycerin, it would solve all their problems. Oh, how many times in my life have I thought that? Little nitroglycerin solves everything. There's a vat of acid they could use as one of the base ingredients all the way back in the prison area, which is near the beginning of the game. But like I explained earlier, we've unlocked so many shortcuts, it's a breeze to jog back there and fill up a flask. In Patrick's lab, James spends some time concocting the explosive while Edward and Koudelka get drunk. What follows is the longest cutscene in the entire game, lasting over 9 minutes. But it's also one of the best. That's right, it's the fireplace scene. Fans will know what I'm talking about. I was tempted to just let the whole thing play out, but instead I'll go over what Edward and Koudelka discuss and just play the highlights. Basically, they each give an account of their pasts and what led them to become the types of people that they are in the present. But it's the ebb and flow of this conversation and how well written the dialogue is that really impresses me. The voice acting is also really good in this scene. They should have just pretended to be drunk the entire game. Koudelka tells Edward she's a gypsy, or rather a rom, as one can only call themselves a true gypsy if they're born and die under the blue sky, or so gypsy legend goes. She also reveals her gypsy name, Zlato, but refuses to tell Edward the meaning. Edward talks about how his father was a strict man and never forgave him for failing academically. When he was a child, Edward was a dreamer, interested in art, poetry, and adventure, but his father believed such things were nonsense and that Edward was useless.
I think I was probably born too late. By the time I was 15, everything there was to be done had already been done. The Western territories were colonized. The jungles had been explored. There was no wilderness for me to wander into. No jungles for me to cut my way through. I guess that's how I ended up roaming the country.
Edward goes on to say that he's jealous of Koudelka's powers and the freedom of her gypsy lifestyle, and that's where the lightheartedness of their conversation takes a turn.
Koudelka, I envy you. You have psychic powers that few are blessed with. Being born a gypsy, you can choose to live how you wish.
And who gave you the right to act as if you figured me out? Do you have any idea how I was raised? You make me laugh. Adventures. Please, you haven't the slightest clue. Do you have any idea how much pain my psychic powers have brought me? My father died when I was only a child. I predicted the exact time, place, and ending of my father's life. Imagine that, predicting your own father's death. No, I was cursed as a child, being given powers not meant for a child. And my mother, she was so frightened and so full of hatred for me. She tried to kill me with her very hands. The gypsy elders got together and decided to excommunicate me. I was only 9 then. Do you have any idea how a 9-year-old child survives without the help of a living soul? Treasures, you must be joking. Have you ever cried and begged for your next meal? Did you ever sell your body, seeking shelter from the frigid night air? I used to be just like Charlotte. When she cried and said, "No one has ever loved me." Oh, her words cut straight through me. It was me she was talking about. Just like her, I wish that everybody would die and harbored a hatred for all mankind. But you see, Charlotte has made her peace and gone to heaven. Me, I'm still alive and still all alone.
Ugh, this scene is so heart-wrenching, and I just love the naivety of Edward, how he envies Koudelka and she just claps back with this powerful story of her past. It's intense.
I am not as free as you make me out to be. I am a poor, dirty, ignorant woman who threw her gypsy pride to the dogs in order to live. But you see, even someone like me can do good. Because with my powers, I can help ease the pain of others. That's when I feel good about living. I don't need to be loved. I just want my life to have some meaning. And just want someone to tell me they need me. You. No way will you ever understand.
God. Oh, hey, the nitroglycerin's ready. In the chapel, Koudelka, Edward, and James find the roots to the Tree of Life, and after tossing Daniel's arm in the cauldron at the base, James lights the roots on fire. The last order of business is to climb the bell tower. Along the way, they fight off some roots, one of which has the body of Patrick Hayworth entwined in it. Weird. After that, the group finds a flower that reveals the body of Elaine. Who chases the group up the stairs to the very top of the tower. You have to fight her twice along the way, and in each battle she's immune and weak to different types of magic. Finally, at the top, you face her final form, which is also the final boss of the game. It's an incredibly difficult fight. She uses powerful magic and powerful physical attacks too, so it's extremely tough to keep the party alive. In fact, I didn't, which instead of resulting in a game over, gives you one of the game's 3 endings. That's right, losing to the final boss is actually a viable way to end the game. Losing means that James will sacrifice himself and successfully destroy Elaine's body, and he and her spirit seem to go off to heaven.
Let's go home, James. Let's go home. I have such fond memories of those days.
No! Flames are coming this way!
Don't be silly. There must be something we can do.
Whoa, hey now.
We'll be fine. Trust me.
I shouldn't have trusted him. But yeah, somehow they survive that plummet, and turns out Koudelka and Edward spent the night together. The next morning they part ways, but not before Koudelka reveals that the meaning of her gypsy name, Zlato, is treasure. Koudelka and Roger Bacon stand watching Edward head off into the sunrise.
Is it okay, child, for you not to follow him?
Yeah, it's okay. I have a feeling that someday, somewhere, we'll meet again.
But what happens if you defeat Elaine? In this ending, Elaine's body falls into the flames below and puts them out, so the tower doesn't explode. Edward and Koudelka just lay around while James sits on a piece of rubble, the 3 of them musing over what they just experienced. Roger's there in this one too. There's also one more ending, and this happens when you don't grab Koudelka's pendant from the courtyard after being attacked by the gargoyle. In the cutscene where Elaine's body emerges, she blasts the party with an attack, and Koudelka blocks it with her pendant. Without the pendant, though... amazing. The canon ending is actually the one where you lose to Elaine. This means that Koudelka and Edward spend the night together, do the dirty, and produce an offspring which sets up the events of Shadow Hearts, which I'll get to some other time. For now, that's Koudelka. Overall, I enjoyed the story and atmosphere, and even though I complained about the slow pacing of the battles, I did enjoy the strategic nature of them, and I liked using AP to build my characters. If you've got the patience, it's a rewarding system. Some of the boss fights were unnecessarily drawn out, but all of the designs were interesting. The tension and conflicts between the main cast, as well as the slow reveal of their backstories and true intentions, made the story extremely well paced. I also really enjoyed the level design and how well connected and grounded all of the areas felt. Koudelka does not deserve to be forgotten. If anything, a remaster with some quality of life improvements, like a speed up function, could greatly increase the enjoyability of the game. It's a relatively quick playthrough for an RPG, and its multiple endings, hidden items, and extra super boss make it worth replaying. Unfortunately, we didn't get Kikuta's original vision for the rest of the Koudelka family saga, but we did get Shadow Hearts, which is a fantastic series in its own right, at least the first two games, and I'll be diving into those at a later date. For now though, I'll bid a fond farewell to the world of Koudelka. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. I feel like a loser every time I say that, but it seems to be working, so I'm gonna keep doing it. And I want to thank the Dungeon Dwellers who support this channel on Patreon and through YouTube memberships. They voted for this video, and they also voted for the next game I'll be covering, which will be Echo Knight 2. I did the first game last year, and now it's finally time for the sequel. If you really like what I do and want to give some extra support to the channel, you can do so by clicking the Patreon link in the description or clicking the join button on this video page to become a YouTube member. Everyone gets to watch videos early, read exclusive posts from me, vote for upcoming games from time to time, and I've got a couple of other things in the works for the Dungeon Dwellers as well. If you support with $5 or more each month, you get your name read out loud at the end of videos like these Dungeon Architects: Antichrist Alex, Benifer94, Dan, David Carr, Glenn Haven, Goats and Goblins, Half HP, High Food Court, Izzy Lexus, Joshua Ayers, Justin Darnell, Captain Ketchup, Kevin Hanley, Kyowa, Meownarchy, Micah Powers, Mr. Eater, Nick Wolf, Nam Daguerre, Oh My God Amba Singh, Richard Cutting, Shannon Gates, Stefano Urenia, and White Like Eyes, as well as these dungeon connoisseurs: Adon, Alberto Amatucci, Alfred Correa, Andy Rahman, Andrew Tovaniti, Anjan01, Arrested Rabbit, Oscar Dranzer, Big Farty Nuts, Bunzo, Chaos Arcanum, Churm Slurm, Chiral Spiral, Concrete Mascara, Crassus Zero, Crippler Jones, Dazed Clockwork, Dika Diko, Deroko, Dungeon Chili, Fangro, Glitterthroat, Hokon Boyum, Harvey Bodega, Indigo Happy, Irregular Rob, J-Bud Airline, Gemma, Jet Daddy, Joe Gother, Jolly Bean, Joshua Weber, Leica Come Home, Liana, Macrophage, Man with Confetti, Michael Oliver, Minced Meat, Mr. Independent, Morgan Osina, Nicholas Polstar, Noel the Monkey, Old Dead Lemons, Olaf Albine, Please Keep Making Videos, Prince Goof, Rainbows 98, Resident Delta, Rez, Ribbon Black, Robert Brandon, Roland, S, Sable, Samurai 85X, Sean, Shark King, Sean, Ciceren, Slowbro96, Slycat, Solar, Spody, T, TCB, True Axiom, Tuesday Twin, TV's Brent, Violet the Insatiable, Warrior Song, Where Am I? Help, Wolfenheim, and Zach Diedrich. Thank you all for your support, and thank you for watching. Next time, Echo Knight 2. Until then, Koudelka. Check it out. Dungeon Chill. Out.